Hi, good morning. I'm Shaftiria Alfadatika Siregar, or Fada, an Energy Management MBA student of SBM ITB. In this opportunity, I will present the summary of my paper submitted for mid-exam of Energy Decisions and Policy subject, titled Fuel Subsidies, Fiscal Risk, and Macroeconomic Stability in Indonesia. Let me start from the overview of the policy I'm analyzing. The government maintains fuel price stability through three main instruments: direct subsidies, compensation, and administered retail price control, or uh, the price means HJE, harga jual eceran. In 2022, total energy subsidies and compensation peaked at around 500 trillion rupiah, mainly in response to the global oil price surge and the post-pandemic recovery period. In this context, the state budget, or APBN, functioned as a shock absorber to prevent sharp increases in domestic fuel prices and inflation. However, when global oil prices or the exchange rate increase, a subsidy gap emerges. The gap is then absorbed by the state budget or APBN, increasing a fiscal burden and potentially affecting deficit levels, debt accumulations, inflation dynamics, and even the current account. This leads to the central question of the paper. Is fuel subsidy primarily a necessary stabilization tool, or does it create significant fiscal and macroeconomic risk over time? Okay, next, this slide explains why fuel price policy is strategically important for Indonesia. At the center is the fuel price stabilization policy, which intersects with five key dimensions: energy security, fiscal stability, energy transition, industrial strategy, and social welfare. From an energy security perspective, Indonesia is exposed to global oil price volatility. We can see in the graph in 2022, during the oil price shock, the ICP rose sharply, which directly increased fiscal pressure. From a fiscal stability standpoint, a subsidy and compensation spending peaked in 22, also reaching 551 trillion rupiah. This shows how sensitive the APBN is to global price movements. At the same time, the policy affects industrial strategy and social welfare by stabilizing logistic costs and protecting purchasing power. However, it may weaken price signals needed for the energy transition. The timeline at the bottom highlights the broader macro context: the COVID-19 pandemic in 20, recovery in 21, the oil price shock in 22, fiscal normalization in 23, and political considerations in 24. So this policy is not just about fuel pricing. It sits at the intersection of macroeconomic stability, fiscal sustainability, and long-term structural transformation. Let me walk through the economic logic behind fuel subsidies. First, why subsidize? From a market failure perspective, there are three main justifications. Fuel is an essential input, so sudden price increases can significantly reduce welfare, especially for vulnerable households and small businesses. Second one, fuel has a high inflation pass-through. When fuel price increase, transportation and food price also tend to follow, creating broader macroeconomic instability. The third one, Indonesia's downstream market, fuel market, is highly regulated, which means market design and structure already limit perfect competition. So, in this context, government intervention can be seen as an attempt to correct affordability constraints and prevent macro shocks. However, intervention itself creates policy risk. Universal price subsidies are not well targeted. For example, more than 157 million vehicles are eligible for Pertalite back then in 2024, which indicates very broad coverage and potential leakage. Lower prices also encourage excessive consumption and create misallocation. In addition, under the PSO scheme, competition is limited, which may reduce cost discipline and create inefficiencies. And from an environmental perspective, cheaper fuel weakens the price signal needed for energy transition, which cause negative externalities. Okay, now from a welfare analysis standpoint, the simple diagram illustrates the trade-off clearly. But anyway, I'll let the elasticity theory aside from this graph. With a subsidy, consumer surplus increases because consumer pay a lower price. So the consumer surplus before the subsidy is the area of A and B, and after the subsidy is the area of A, B, C, D, E, and F. And the producer surplus is also protected through compensation mechanisms. However, the government bears the fiscal cost, like for the subsidy and compensation cost, yeah, as shown on the area of B, C, E, F, G, H. And economically, that weight loss emerges, which is shown on the area of H. This means that while total welfare may increase for certain groups, there is also an efficiency loss and a transfer of risk to the state budget. Finally, in terms of the interventions, the policy can be justified if the social cost of price spikes, such as inflation and poverty, is greater than the distortion cost created by the subsidy. But this depends heavily on design. If targeting is weak and price controls are too broad, then the distortion may outweigh the benefits. So the core issue is not whether to intervene, but how to design intervention in a way that protects vulnerable groups without creating long-term fiscal inefficiency and structural distortion. Okay, next, this slide explains how the fuel subsidy system is designed and where the institutional risks emerge. First, we can see from the how the mechanism works. Uh, the government sets the HJE. Pertamina is assigned under the PSO scheme to supply fuel at the control price. When the economic price, which is driven by global oil prices and exchange rates, is higher than HJE, the gap is financed by APBN. In a sense, subsidy is a price gap financing mechanism. And then the second one, there are a lot of institutions involved in this scenario, in this policy. Like Kementerian SDM sets the price, set prices, and also the assignments. And Kemenkeu or Kementerian Keuangan manages subsidy and compensation systems. Then Pertamina operates the supply system. DPR provides budgetary and supervisory functions. Bank Indonesia focuses on inflation stability. BPH Migas regulates downstream distribution, and BPK audits fiscal accountability. So this is not a single agency policy. It is an interinstitutional framework. Now, in terms of distributional impact, consumers and industry benefit from lower prices and cost stability. However, the burden is borne by APBN and taxpayers. Which reduces fiscal space and may shift costs to future generations through debt accumulation. Finally, there are institutional risks. The compensation mechanism creates volume incentives. meaning higher consumption increases fiscal exposure. Under recovery can become contingent liabilities. If cost formulas are not transparent, regulatory mispricing risks increase, and over time, the expectation of fiscal support may weaken cost discipline, creating a soft budget constraint. So overall, the system doesn't eliminate risk. It redistributes the risk across institution and the public balance sheet. This slide highlights the fiscal implications of fuel subsidy volatility. First, there is the risk of budget overruns. When oil prices spike suddenly, the price gap widens. If retail prices are not immediately adjusted, compensation bills can exceed initial allocations, forcing reallocation of spending or additional fiscal measures. This creates immediate fiscal pressure. Second, there is the risk of financing. In 2022, debt increased by around 18%, uh, and interest expenditure rose by around 11%. At the same time, subsidies accounted for nearly 17.8% of total state expenditure. This shows that external oil shocks were absorbed partly through higher borrowing, translating price volatility into debt dynamics. Third, there is the risk of crowding out. In 2022, subsidy spending was more than twice a capital expenditure, reducing fiscal space for infrastructure and long-term development programs. Okay, next, this slide highlights the macroeconomic implication of fuel subsidy policy. First, on inflation, in 2022, subsidy and compensation spending peaked at around 500 trillion rupiah. Yet inflation was contained at 5.51% despite the global oil shock. In 23 and 24, inflation returned to the around 1 up to 3% range, while subsidy spending remain above 370 trillion rupiah. This suggests that fuel subsidies function as a price stabilization tool. However, the trade-off is clear. Inflation pressure was mitigated, but the cost was transferred to the state budget. Second, there is the twin deficit risk. As oil prices increase from around 40 in 20 to 97 USD per barrel in 22, oil and gas imports surged significantly. At the same time, subsidy spending also rose sharply. This creates simultaneous pressure on the current account and the fiscal deficit, which is called with the twin deficit, meaning one external shock can widen both deficits at once. Third, exchange rate exposure amplifies this vulnerability. Since oil is priced in USD, rupiah depreciation widens the subsidy gap, like from rupiah depreciation from 14,000 to 15,000 something. Yeah, it widens the subsidy gap even when the global oil prices moderate. As a conclusion, the subsidy mechanism doesn't eliminate external shocks. It reallocates them from the market to the state budget and the macroeconomy. These slides summarize the core dilemma of fuel subsidy policy in Indonesia. At its heart, the issue is a tension between short-term stability and long-term sustainability. In the short term, expanding subsidies help stabilize prices during oil shocks. It also protects purchasing power, supports social protection, maintains affordability, and also avoids inflation spikes. Politically and economically, this delivers immediate stability. However, the same policies generate long-term risks. Subsidy expansion can erode fiscal sustainability. Price stabilization weakens the energy transition signal by reducing incentives for efficiency and clean energy adoption. Broad social protection can become regressive if benefits leak to higher income groups. Price control may reduce market competition. Fiscal accountability can be undermined when compensation mechanisms evolve into quasi-fiscal operations. And maintaining affordable fuel can increase import dependency and exchange rate exposure. So the dilemma is structural. Each short-term stabilization measure carries embedded long-term vulnerabilities. Based on the analysis, the policy direction should focus on reforming both the price mechanism and the governance framework. First, reforming the policy design. Instead of relying on broad price subsidies, Indonesia should gradually implement a cost-based fuel price formula with a cap and collar mechanism. This allows prices to adjust with global conditions, but within a control band to avoid sudden shocks. At the same time, subsidies should shift from price-based to targeted support, so fiscal resources are directed toward vulnerable groups rather than broadly distributed. Importantly, inflation stabilization instruments should be separated from social protection instruments to improve policy precision. Second, reforming compensation governance. Compensation obligations should be treated explicitly as projected fiscal risk and reported transparently. A rule-based staggered payment mechanism can reduce compensation debt accumulation. In addition, PSO contracts should incorporate efficiency incentives to avoid soft budget constraints. I also provide like a simple roadmap here. The roadmap should be gradual. In the short term, it needs to strengthen interagency coordination and transparency. In the medium term, to fully implement the pricing for MUA and targeted subsidies. And in the long term, to integrate subsidy reform with energy transition, redirecting fiscal savings toward productive and low carbon investment. Ultimately, the goal is not abrupt subsidy removal, but a managed transition that preserves stability while restoring fiscal and structural resilience. Okay, as a conclusion, this is not a debate about removing subsidies, but about redesigning the subsidy policy itself. Stabilization and sustainability should not be treated as opposites, but as objectives that must be aligned through better policy design and stronger fiscal governance. Thank you and have a good day.